Hey guys, what's up? John from fly8micealpha.com, and today we're going to be talking about Class B airspace, the busy stuff, where the world's busiest airports are, where we have some of the most jet traffic, the most air traffic in general. How does Class B airspace work, and what do you need to know about it as a private pilot? So first things first, let's take a look at Tampa Class B Airspace here. So just north of the Sarasota Airport, we have Class B Airspace surrounding the Tampa Airport. And we can see these blue lines. Now it's important not to confuse these blue lines with the blue lines of Victor Airways like we have over here running across the state. So these darker blue lines, and what they denote ultimately is they're just sections of a big old pie or a big old cake, and they have numbers inside here, like 100 over 60. And 100 over 12, 100 over the surface, and so on, 100 over 3,000. What that's telling you is whichever section that you find that number in, for that particular section of airspace, that is the ceiling and the floor of it. So for this section here, we can follow these blue lines around, and we get this piece of the pie, kind of an odd shape, but they use the shoreline and identifiable features like shorelines, interstates, bridges, things like that, to help VFR pilots identify the edges of Class B airspace. So this section here that I just drew out, that is from 6,000 feet MSL up to 10,000 feet MSL. So if you're at 5,500 feet and you're right in here, you're below it. Not a problem. If you are at 10,500 feet and you're right around here or all up into here, you are above it. Doesn't matter. So that's how those shelves work. And we'll go ahead and take a look at a horizontal view here now. And so we've got our Tampa Class B airspace kind of laid down on its side there, and we're going to go ahead and take a side view look at what the airspace layers actually look like. So starting at the very top, we said 10,000 feet was the very top, and we're going to have that shelf, that block of airspace, and the base we said was 6,000 feet. So we can still kind of see here, if your eyes are real good, the 10,000 and 6,000 over there. And over here, we see the same thing. The next drop down we said we had was going to be at 3,000 feet. And we can see where the next shelf kind of comes down to 3,000 feet. So you could be flying underneath here. You could be at 3,500 underneath this shelf and be below the 6,000 foot floor. And then our next layer went all the way down to 1,200. And eventually we got all the way down to the surface, down to ground level. So you could get real close to the airport as long as you're low, and you could go higher, but you have to be further away from the main Class B airport, which is Tampa International Airport. The reason behind that is you have jets coming down, arriving into the airport, coming down and going up. And I know that seems like a steep approach or descent path, but the airspace is spread out much farther. That's much more wide. So they actually come in nice and shallow, and they're protected, staying inside the Class B airspace. And then if you want to go in it, you have to talk to approach control. They have to give you a transponder code, and they have to positively identify you on radar. That way they can separate you from other aircraft. Now, our minimums in Class B airspace for flying VFR are still 3 statute miles flying in the daytime, but you don't have to be 1,000 feet above, 500 feet below, and 2,000 feet horizontally from a cloud. You can actually just be clear of clouds, which seems crazy, right? You're around a bunch of busy jet traffic, but that's because in Class B airspace, the approach controller takes responsibility for separation between you and other traffic. And so you can be just 3 statute miles and clear of clouds is your VFR minimums flying in Class B airspace because you are protected from those other aircraft. Now, not to say that you're visual, so it's still up to you to avoid other airplanes. If you see one coming towards you, you should turn, not hit it. But the approach controller is paying much closer attention to you when you're in Class B airspace and they've assigned you a code on your transponder compared to when you're flying in, say, Class C airspace or flying in Class D airspace like over there in Lakeland. Now, some other quick notes here while we're talking about the regulations with Class B airspace. It's still 250 knots below 10,000 feet. Of course, that's everywhere. But it's 200 knots as the speed limit when you're below a floor. So if you're flying out here and you're below 10,000, the speed limit's 250. If you come underneath the floor of Class B airspace, you have to slow down to 200 knots. Or if you're going through the Class B airspace through a VFR corridor, we'll talk more about those VFR corridors here in a bit, then you're going to be having to slow down to 200 knots going through that VFR corridor. Another important thing to note about Class B airspace is you can't just have two-way radio communication to allow you in. You actually have to be cleared into the Class B airspace. Now, there's a couple different ways this can work. You can be cleared into the Class B airspace by simply being given a heading and an altitude to fly that takes you through the Class B airspace. More importantly, you want to hear the words that you are cleared into Class B airspace. And if you don't hear those words, query the controller and say, hey, verify that Cessna such and such, or confirm that I am in fact cleared into Class B airspace. And then you hear those words and they go on the tapes, and that's great. Now, if it's so busy that you can't talk on the radio and you can't get a word in edgewise, it's okay. Just go ahead and fly the heading and altitude that you were assigned, because you can't deviate from an ATC clearance unless you have an emergency, and flying through Class B airspace is not an emergency. Now let's go ahead here and take a look at a 3D view of Class Bravo airspace. So what does it look like in 3 dimensions? Because we talk about all these different layers, and it's kind of hard to visualize, but here you can actually see how the different layers follow those shorelines, follow the interstate, follow notable landmarks on the ground so VFR pilots can recognize where they are in relation to those shelves. Are they under a 3,000-foot shelf, or are they under a 6,000-foot shelf? How high can they actually fly? And if you note in the course in the center there, it goes all the way down to the surface. The top, across the top, is a nice even 10,000 feet MSL. If we zoom in here down to MacDill Air Force Base, and we go ahead and look north, we'll actually be able to see the cone of Class B airspace coming all the way down to the surface around Tampa International. And you can actually see Tampa International in the background there. You can see those runways, the one left and one right runway going north there. So that is Class B airspace in a nutshell. Hopefully you guys find that helpful. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments below. We'd be more than happy to get back to you. Make sure you check out our airspace course on flyatmikealpha.com. There's a lot of 3D visuals, a lot of renderings that really help bring airspace to life so you can fully understand Class A, B, C, D, E, and G airspace. And as always, guys, make sure you check out our Patreon page. We greatly appreciate it. If you cannot fly every day, then fly8mikealpha.com. We will see you all next time.